Hello YouTube, this is the first official episode of my Earth and Star Wars series. I want to mention something before we begin, and that is the layout of this series. This first episode will be purely history, so it will cover the broader story of Earth as it interacts with the Star Wars universe. The next episode will be anthological. So it will cover the changes that occur in Terran society, both technological and cultural, as they experience the different events which unfold in the story. The third episode will be a character story which will follow a primary protagonist through the entire series who will evolve based on experiences in the story. And this way I hope to give you guys a very holistic and very entertaining view of how I see the story of Star Wars, or of Earth in Star Wars rather, playing out. And the series will progress much like this, with history, anthology, character, history, anthology, character, rinse, repeat, until the end of the series. So without any further ado, let's begin. Terran history, the history of Earth, can be split into three eras: Pre-Federate, Federate, and Union. The Pre-Federate era contains all events which occurred leading up to the Great Expanse, when the Terrans began colonizing other worlds. The Federate era contains all events which occurred between the Great Expanse and the formation of the Galactic Union. Finally, the Union era contains all events which follow the formation of the Galactic Union. We will begin with the Pre-Federate era. This era spans from the first colonization of Earth to the end of the Clone Wars in 19 BBY. As such, it is the longest and most diverse period of Terran history. The story of Earth does not begin with humans, however. The first inhabitants of this planet were Force-sensitive giants who used their immense power to shape the world. Humans did not come to Earth until about 50,000 BBY. And even then it was rather by accident. The first humans who landed on Earth were cast adrift by a storm in the mid-rim. Their ship landed on an island in the middle of what would come to be known as the Mediterranean Sea. These humans lived on this island for nearly 1,000 years, and at the end of this first millennium on Earth, the humans found that the island they called home was incredibly unstable due to a process that was accelerated by their crash landing. Though some humans were indeed stubborn to leave, many did, settling to the north, south, and east. Those who traveled north established some small kingdoms initially, but as they traveled farther north, they became more tribal. The same happened with those who went south. Those who traveled east were the ones who really established the first kingdoms on Earth, and even the first empires. For the first few millennia, the humans and giants did not come into conflict. There were, of course, humans who were Force-sensitive, but with no knowledge of the Force, there was little they could do to threaten the giants' power. There were those who turned to sorcery, but the most they did was make crops grow and the weather remain favorable. As such, a sort of harmony developed between the humans and giants, as the giants were too big to hunt or grow their own crops. This is what drove their warlike nature, after all, as they were cannibals. It was not until around the mid-3000s BBY that conflict arose between the giants and humans. Earth, in its close proximity to Rakata Prime, was struck with several stray fragments of the Starforge. These fragments exuded dark side energy, awakening the Force in those humans who were sensitive to it. These humans grew in power and number until the giants began to fear them. There is not much known of the war that followed, though the Terran legends of the Titans and Olympians seem to be the most accurate. as the cannibalistic giants began to kill and eat the Force-sensitive humans. Enraged by this genocide, one hero arose to lead the Force-sensitives in rebellion, slaying all the giants and freeing his brothers and sisters from oppression. With the giants dead, these Force-sensitive humans became like gods to the common folk, and they lived as such. These gods left common humanity behind and built for themselves mighty cities in far-flung reaches of the world. This was not to last, however, as the common humans soon populated the earth enough to encroach on the gods' territory. The gods saw this encroachment as trespassing and blasphemy, having fully given themselves to believing their own legend. Driven by indignation and dark-side fury, the gods stormed and began destroying the humans. There were many who resisted, however, and just like the giants before them, the gods fell to a more numerous foe. Those Force-sensitives who either resisted the idea of war or managed to escape death on the battlefield melded into common society, hiding their Force sensitivity. Some did come out as great heroes of war or prophets of distant gods, but most remained silent. After the fall of the gods, there were no great conflicts such as this, and though major and minor wars abounded, humanity seemed to make steady progress forward. This whole time they remained ignorant to the wider galaxy. It was not until several millennia later that they were finally introduced to the galactic community. Around the Terran year of AD 2023, the Confederacy of Independent Systems and the Galactic Republic went to war. The Confederacy, realizing they were outmatched by the more elite clone forces of the Republic, sought an early victory in the form of a hyperspace lane through the unknown regions. This would grant them immediate access to the core worlds of the Republic. The problem with this plan was that no such hyperspace lane existed. The CIS had a way around this, however. They would send a spearheading force into the unknown regions to establish interdiction stations on different worlds along the route. This would allow the Confederacy to pull their fleets out of hyperspace before overshooting the target planet. The station would then send the coordinates of the next planet to the fleet, and in this way the CIS hoped to create an artificial, albeit slow, hyperspace lane. When the campaign began, progress was slow, but it was progress nonetheless. There were populated planets which needed to be capitulated, and minor warlord factions which needed to be overcome. None of these proved too much for the vast droid army, however, and the Force moved on. When the spearhead came to Earth, progress did halt. Whereas most planets either immediately offered resistance or surrendered outright, this new planet spent time deliberating. Earth, unbeknownst to the Confederacy, was not ruled by a single government. Rather, it was ruled by a myriad of independent nation-states. As time passed, the Confederate forces became irritated, demanding an ultimatum. Fearing full-scale invasion, many nations of Earth began calling for a planet-wide surrender. The leader of the home state of the city in which the leaders met said otherwise, that they would resist. His plan was for everyone else to surrender, and for his state, the United States of America, to resist. This would immediately draw the Confederate attention to his nation. He would resume governmental affairs from New York City to trick the invaders into believing that city was the capital, thus drawing their forces to invade there. This would give the other nations time to amass forces in order to counterattack. When the news was delivered that the United States desired to resist, the Confederacy attacked, launching their full force to what they assumed was the capital of the planet. This was how they had taken the previous worlds, but it proved to play right into the Terran trap. When the Confederacy landed their troops, they found empty homes and quiet streets. As well, there was only a minimal security force offering resistance. The tactical droid leading the force couldn't help but let out a mechanical laugh as it witnessed the droid forces overwhelm the city. When the resistance finally withdrew, the CIS established full supremacy of the city, expecting a surrender within hours. What came was not a surrender, but a bombardment, as the United States launched thousands of artillery rounds into the city. The strikes destroyed very few droids, and it was only too late that the commanders of the droid forces realized that the city was being turned into a trap. Artillery toppled buildings, plugging important transit zones, and effectively trapping the CIS in the city. Attempts to withdraw back were met with effective air superiority from the atmospheric fighters and anti-air missiles. Furthermore, the nations which had surrendered now arrived with a massive armada of ocean-going vessels which prevented any repulsor lift vehicles from escaping via the water. For almost a week, precision bombing and artillery laid waste to the Confederate forces until the infantry assault began. The Terrans, who were more capable of maneuvering through the rubble, used crumbled towers as sniper nests, and waves of Terran infantry poured in from land and sea. In a shocking blitz, the Confederate forces were overcome. The Confederate fleet, which was ordered to begin bombarding, was met with powerful missiles which destroyed or disabled ships with a single strike. This retaliation forced the fleet to withdraw. With the news of the Confederate defeat in the unknown regions came a wave of Republic support to Earth, with both technology and resources flooding the Terran markets as Republic forces helped them to rebuild. Earth, in response to this immediate aid, agreed to ally with the Republic to fight the Confederacy, though they refused to be annexed into the Galactic Senate. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will be posting the second episode today as well, to keep on schedule from my missed upload last week. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the series. I really still need to come up with a better outro, though. So, I guess until then, have a good day.